Hello everyone, I'm Dimitri Champollion, Director of Brand and Communications at ESCP. Thank you for joining us tonight. This event is hosted by ESCP Business School and our media, The Choice. For the record, ESCP Business School is the oldest business school in the world. So with over 200 years of experience, we know pretty well that in business, as in life, everything starts with choices. And when you are a leader, the choice you make have a huge impact on business, on society, and of course, on the planet. 2 years ago, we also made a choice. We launched a media. Yes, a business school launched a media. We wanted to help leaders and business leaders to rethink the world through the expertise and the commitments of our faculty, our alumni, and our students. I'm very happy to introduce you Emily Oliarchuk, my colleague, who is also the editor of The Choice, and she will tell you more about the exciting program of tonight.
Thank you very much, Dimitri, and welcome again, everyone, to ESCP Live. This is our digital talk show where we bring together experts from the ESCP community and beyond to talk about some of the hot management and leadership trends of our time. Through ESCP Live, our goal is to bring to life many of the conversations and questions that we are asking all year round at ESCP and on The Choice. So, without further ado, let's get the first ESCP Live started. For our first ESCP Live, we wanted to dive deeper into what it means to be a talent today, and in particular, how a sustainability mindset can come into play in that. So to do that, we are delighted to have Professor of Sustainability, Aurélien Acquier, with us as our moderator. He has over 15 years of experience teaching ESCP students in alternative business models, social innovation, and sustainability. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Emily.
Great. So before we get started with our guest experts, which I know who we're all eager to hear from, I wanted to ask you a question. Why do you think it's important to be talking about talent and sustainability right now?
Well, I think it's really key in the context of a business school like ESCP to talk about that today, because as a school, our first objective is to attract the best talent worldwide. And actually, when you consider sustainability topics, well, it is super clear today that sustainability is a must to be included in our programs. And actually, if you look at the students, they are quite vocal about that. In France, in Europe, and all over the world, it's really a request and a demand that students make to us to train them on these topics. And so basically what we did 4 years ago, we made a choice and we made a clear choice to say that, okay, we need to train experts in sustainability, of course, so to have dedicated expertise on carbon accounting, on circular economy topics, etc. But the biggest mission that we have is also to develop the talents, whatever the field they are going to work in. And so we decided to introduce compulsory classes on planetary boundaries and the impact of planetary boundaries on business on all our degrees. So it means that if you join ESCP today in the bachelor program, in the MIM program, in the executive MBA program, or even if you're a PhD, you are going to be trained on these topics to make the links with your expertise. And so the idea, basically, is not only to train sustainability experts, but to train managers with a sustainability mindset. And it makes a big difference, of course.
And how is that going to change the game?
Yeah, so to echo the second part of the speech tonight, yeah, it's changing the game in various ways. It's super interesting to see the reaction of the students that didn't want to professionalize in these topics. And for them, it's really a shock and a big learning experience and emotional experience as well, and individual experience. And the most frequently asked question that we discuss is, okay, what do I do now with my professional projects? Should I stay or should I go, to echo this Clash music that I love? What is the best way to have an impact? Should I stay in my current job, in my current company, or leave? And maybe if you follow the news, you've seen that it's a big question for students nowadays to question how to integrate this topic in their professional life. And I think it's really the debate we're going to have this evening.
Absolutely. Well, what a perfect starting point. I'll get out of the way so we can hear the actual experts talk about this important topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, without further ado, let's dig in. We have three wonderful guests this evening to exchange about talent, sustainability, and well, how there is a fundamental reality changing in our economies, in our business. So I will start by presenting you and then raising a first question. And during the first question, I guess you will have also the opportunity to explain us where you come from and what do you do related to talent and sustainability topics. So first, we are very happy to welcome Fabien Del. So welcome, Fabien. Fabien, since the end of 2019, you have been the economic advisor to the European Commissioner for Employment and Social Rights, Nicolas Schmit. And your responsibility today include different topics which are really at the core of the debates we're going to have. So InvestEU, you are also very much involved in the economic and social dimensions of the European Green Deal. And also you are involved in the different projects about future of work, right?
That's true. Working, yeah.
Yeah. So on your left, we are very happy to welcome Lubomila Jordanova. So Lubomila, you are the co-founder and CEO of Plan A, which is a startup based in Germany, but operating worldwide, right? You're also, so it's an award-winning platform for business carbon accounting, decarbonization, and ESG reporting. So you will explain us a little bit how your system operates and how it's being integrated into the companies you work with. You are the co-founder of the Green Tech Alliance, and also you were selected as Obama Leader for Europe 2022. And yeah.
Star of LinkedIn.
Yeah. So we have a star this evening. So thank you for being with us.
Super happy to be next to Lubomila.
And we have a last star with us this evening, Antoine Poincaré. So Antoine, you are the head of AXA Climate School. Your mission is to help companies upskill their staff on sustainability transition. And you will explain us how you do that. Actually, AXA Climate School is startup inside AXA, right? So you're kind of the entrepreneur this evening. The company was officially created in 2021, so it's a very young one, but very big impact already. You have now a team of 30 people working with you, but you also reach more than 3 million learners within 1 year. Part of it is actually at ESCP.
Absolutely.
And also we are very happy that AXA is employing many ESCP alumni actually in its
Yes. I'm not an ESCP, but ESCP is the most represented school within my whole team.
It's similar in planning.
So thank you being with us this evening. And so we'll share the this evening in 2 moments. The first moment will be an exchange with us during 25 minutes, and then we'll open the room for questions. So for those of you who are on LinkedIn, etc., don't hesitate to raise questions. We'll moderate them and we'll share the questions in the second part of the exchange. So as a first point, I would like to have your opinion on how big is this talent thing for sustainability. Actually, there is a risk that you could believe, okay, there are expectations from students today to be trained on sustainability. They have more ecological values, and so actually companies should respond to it. So is it the end of the story, or is it something bigger than that? And so to see that, I would like to ask you if you can share with us some facts, some figure, to share with us how big is this problem of talent, sustainability, and transformation of companies. So for that, maybe I will ask Lubomila to share with us your impressions.
Before jumping straight into the data, I think it's really important to recognize that any job on this planet in the coming years will be a climate job. Our economy is going to transform incredibly fundamentally in the coming decades. It is already being shaped by all the legislation that is coming up, but also by just the mindset shift. And with this in mind, there's not going to be a single person that has a job that wouldn't have to have at least some sort of knowledge on the topic itself. There was a really interesting statistic that came out a few months ago, I believe, which was saying that for any kind of energy job that you look at, 10 go for renewable, 1 goes for fossil fuels. What this is to say is that there's a lot of demand at the moment as we're building this new, more renewably sourced and forced economy to essentially, first of all, find talent, train talent, but also this is already the fact and figure that we have now. These are the people that are being employed versus what has been maybe done in the past. What is this to show us is that if we look at this particular angle, we're looking into a technology that maybe has not existed, or at least it has not been scaled at that level. All of the people that would need to be part of this economy would need to upskill themselves, update themselves, use the old knowledge, but then explain how do we go through this transformation. This is an emotional and intellectual, and I think also a collaborative process. So the types of skills that are needed go heavily beyond knowing what scope 1, 2, and 3 is. It really goes into understanding humility, understanding what it means to work with many different stakeholders, and also understanding the challenge that it takes to change mindsets.
Thank you. Do you want to react on this, Antoine?
When companies are lost, they look at consulting, so it's always interesting to see what's happening in the consulting firm. And the numbers that struck me, it was last year, PwC announced a big hiring plan. They called it Titan or something like that because they're so American. And they said, we want to hire 100,000 sustainable consultants. We want to have 100,000 sustainable consultants by 2025. Back then, there was 2,000 sustainable consultants in the company. The whole company was 300,000 people. So they don't say if they need to switch and to swap people. They don't say if they want to hire them. But what's for sure, they're never going to do it. It's unreachable as a number in 3 years. But the fact that they say we need that is a kind of testimony of what the market in the end is going to need. Because some days companies stop paying for consultants and they internalize the skill sets. So I think looking at what's happening in those service firm and consulting firm is an interesting pre-taste of what is going to look like for companies.
Absolutely, and what we observe also today is that it's particularly striking to see that generalist consulting firms are really moving very boldly on this type of topics. Until a few years ago, we had some specialized companies, but we see that in the consulting field, it's really going mainstream.
BCG acquired Quantis. Are they going to break the toy or not? It's a question, because when you join Quantis as a company, it was not the exact same type of spirit and vibe as joining the BCG. So there's also this question of, can they become as sustainable as their people want it to be?
Jumping in here, I think this is an important remark with regards to the fact that we really need to start thinking also about this mindset shift that we will anticipate. I remember seeing the headline from BCG on the Financial Times saying, we're looking for climate activists. And this is just to demonstrate what kind of fundamental shift there's been in the mindset internally to then try to seek people that probably wouldn't have had BCG as a first priority on their application list. This is not going to be a straightforward process. And what we have seen as Plan A, so context for what we do, software as a service platform for decarbonization, tracking, and policy alignment. We work with more than 1,000 businesses, a lot of big banks like BNP Paribas, Société Générale, Deutsche Bank, but also fashion companies like Chloe, Ganni. Second biggest office is in Paris. We actually have quite a few in Munich, in London, and the fastest growing one is also here. And we have a lot of climate activists in our team, but when they come to us, they say, I would never work for fossil fuel company. I would never work for, and then name a particular company, because there's still, and there will be until people don't prove what they're standing for when they make a net zero commitment, a lot of questions with regards to the true value of sustainability within a company. Is it a brand? Is it a story? Is it really you understanding that you fundamentally need to transform your business model because you know you're not going to be able to survive?
So you have the activists. You have activists as well in your company?
I have 100% activists.
Yeah. And actually, what is interesting is that you are working with companies that doesn't have the same profile, as you said. Are there debates about which company should you work with and how should you help their transformation? Can you just elaborate on that? And then we will turn to the political aspect.
We get a lot of questions, and because of the way Plan A is managed, we open up all of these decisions to our team discussions. We don't believe in an approach where the management has decided something and then let's hope that the team aligns somehow. And it has been sometimes quite painful. I remember this story, and not because we wanted to work with someone, but because we had to realize like how still cynical the reality is in some cases. So a few years back, we received an offer for 1 million euros, just like that. We was not like an investment. It was not, it was, we're gonna do a campaign with you. We're a coal company and you take 1 million. We just wanna use your logo. And of course we didn't take the money. That's, I'm assuming, a given. But I remember how I felt when this came to us in a written form, and then also in a phone call, because they were quite persistent. Were you thinking like, I wouldn't have thought that this is even possible. But we need to realize, and then bringing it maybe to a larger level beyond Plan A, that if I am shaped in my view and choice to build a company without making any compromises to my values, there's on the other end of the spectrum a lot that are not necessarily given up on values, but they are sleeping with regards to whether values should be part of the day-to-day decision-making on a business level, because they impose their values on other elements of their living. We're not there yet, and we need to realize that. And whenever someone makes a decision of the next job that they take, they need to question the values of the companies that they choose, because they're going to be burned otherwise very quickly from the disappointment.
We have debate, yes, on which clients should we like go after or accept as clients. Basically, we do two stuff. We provide courses that we already done, that are super science-based, that we are very proud of to company. And another line of activity is we produce bespoke content for companies to tackle their own sustainability issue. And here we are an agency. So in the end, what we say in the video, we can push for stuff, but in the end, the client has the kind of final cut. And what we decided is that with some companies that we are really not super comfortable with, all of the oil company, all of the airline company, giving our content, we think, goes in the right direction either way. Producing bespoke content is going to be hard. Fighting to say, no problem, there's going to be a green plane is not something I want to do, even if we make some money out of that, and if we somehow, a bit like you said, stem that with our credibility in what we do. So this is the line we drew so far. But yes, a big debate, and even big debate on what we do. I mean, do we still take planes to go to clients if that's needed at some point? And we are not perfect at all, and we're trying to find a way to do that.
Okay. Here, I would like also to hear Fabien. So here you're not in the same type of context. You are the actor who's trying to make the synthesis of society, of all sectors, and actually talking about how big this issue of transformation is. I think the Green Deal is really the perfect illustration to talk about that and how it infuses across the European Commission.
Yes, maybe I can zoom out a little bit and go and just recall one of the. I mean, so the Green Deal is really the overarching policy of this Commission. So the Commission von der Leyen, which started back at the end of 2019, and I mean, just to give you a couple of idea. I don't know how precisely you know what's the European agenda on this, but back in July 21st, after the COVID crisis and before the war in Ukraine, which obviously impact also the field of what we do in the questions of carbon neutrality in particular, we launched a policy package to be fit for 55, so 55% of carbon emission reduction on the horizon of 2035. And this package is, I would say, if you look at the policies that are planned, so the package is currently being digested by the Parliament and the Council. It's not 100% yet, entered into force. But if you look at the ambition of the policies that are contained in this package, it really plans on changing relative prices in the economy by a magnitude that hasn't been seen in a generation at least, and maybe even one could argue in the course of the peacetime in the 20th century. It's really something that is totally disruptive, in the good sense of the world, just for the sake of the planet, and which is obviously a challenge. So, in terms of talents required to put that, to design and then to implement that, I would say that 99% of the Commission is one way or the other active in delivering that, has been active in delivering that package, and is going to be active in making good on the promise and the commitment. And so specifically now to go to the skills aspect, it is, and this is more related to what I do day to day, what my commissioner does day to day. There's a huge part of the agenda there, which is upskilling people, not only in the green field, but also in digital, but green is very important. Upskill people and have an agenda of upskilling of the workforce in Europe for the coming decade. And this agenda is, we can talk about this in detail, it's quite ambitious and has a lot of ramification in many policy fields. Just one striking thing, the Commission, can declare or can propose to the Parliament to declare the year of something. Well, the year 2023 is the year of skills. And this is not coming out of nowhere. It is because we really think that if we don't succeed in this upskilling of the workforce in Europe, not only are we going to lose, our standing economically, but we're also not going to be able sometimes to deliver, in some regards, to deliver on the Green Deal. So this is very important, and this is something we're working very hard on. So I'm very happy and delighted to be here tonight to discuss this with people who are closer to the.
Maybe bouncing back on the skills example, when Lubomira said every job is a climate job, this was coined after every job is a digital job. Yeah. That was up and coming in the US at some point. And when we said that, the lame answer was to say everybody should learn how to code at school. This is not at all what happened. We don't care. What happened is that every marketer, every business school student, every HR people, every no matter who, every IT people obviously, but every accountant suddenly got that job digitalized, whether they wanted it or not. There were tools, and the people that didn't know how to use the tools were out of a job pretty soon, etc. It's going to be the same with that. So it's not only about having enough people able to build a wind turbine, it's about every marketer know what is greenwashing and how do you avoid it, about every financial people being able to decode CSRD, TCFD, Article 29 en France, and the green taxonomy. It's about every purchasing manager know what does that mean to buy responsibly, and how does that change the whole mindset and the relationship. So it's, and that is typically, bouncing back on your initial point, not only the Gen Z. That is typically something that is going to go through the whole spine of what companies are using as talents. So that's massive. And difference with digital is that we're going to need to kill the old jobs. In digital, nobody was trying to actively kill the job. You had Airbnb that was working, but nobody was actively destroying hotels. Here we're gonna. No, but you see my point. It was only a market dynamic. Here we're gonna need to proactively decide to decommission some activities and therefore some skills with regulation and not only with the market.
But the good news is that some of these positions are not necessarily killed but transformed. I'll give an example from COP27. I was there a few weeks back. We can debate afterwards if it was, how disappointing it was. But on one hand, it was actually really positive because of what I saw on the business side. And one particular example that quite deeply shocked me was a roundtable that was organized by one of the biggest automotive companies in the US, which was specifically on reskilling. And that was a recurring theme extensively throughout all of the commercial business discussions, and I was really pleased to see how much really reskilling was at the core of what businesses were discussing at COP. They were giving the example of electric vehicles and how at the moment there's a massive shortage of people that can work on the repairs of them, and also on experts that know the latest version of batteries that are there to support our electric vehicles to exist at scale and also to be working extensively. If you think about that, it might seem like a little building block of the whole chain of shifts that needs to happen, but it is a crucial one. It is the one that is going to decarbonize a few dozen of percentages from our economy if it's done properly.
A key question related to that, we see that it's a systemic issue, actually, and that all functions are being concerned. But then, Lubomila, you are working on carbon assessment, carbon accounting, ESG. How do you bring this topic at the right level of the organization to make it really strategic? Because then I heard you saying that you were very much concerned about the link between commitments and actual trajectories. And so how do you deal with, how do you bring these topics at the right level of the organization within your clients?
It's important to mention that we have understood for the 5 years of existence in these 1,000 companies that we've been able to serve by now, that the starting point on sustainability is not always the same. And a company like us needs to have respect for that. That is why our software is structured in a way that if we have a green champion, that is someone that is, let's say, in the tech department or the HR department that is trying to push the sustainability agenda within the company, they should have a way to do this through our software. And that means that they need to have one starting point. If it's the CSO, the Chief Sustainability Officer, then the starting point is a different one. And the product aligns itself. We can go into the depth of that maybe at another time, according to what really the starting point is. Why have we done it in this way is because we don't think there's a wrong or right way to kick off your sustainability journey in a business. Sometimes people do it because of the concern for the legislation. EU taxonomy is in the back of the minds of all these C-levels from all sorts of types, the Chief Sustainability Officer, Chief Finance Officer, the procurement people. It's all over the place because it's just penetrating so many different elements of the existence of a business. For some, that's the way they kick it off. They say, we need to be compliant, we need to understand what all these KPIs, and all of a sudden start to calculate, collect data, and so on. For others, it's about the team awareness, and that's when they found out about the Acquier Climate School, and then they, some engaged employees brought along some colleagues, and then these colleagues built a little team that is the green team now. Then this green team goes to the C-levels and says, give me a budget, I'm going to kick this off, given you've not given someone the title. That's another starting point, but how we do it is really to respect this discrepancy. And the good thing is that by now we've seen enough drama and also enough success to be incredibly respectful to enthusiasm of all sorts and to lack of knowledge. Because the biggest issue at this point of time of this industry is that there's very little deep understanding of the fundamental transformation our economy is going to go through, be it because of the legislation, be it because of the costs coming from all the climate change that we're not prepared for.
Do you agree with that, Fabien, that actually this knowledge gap, this problem of understanding about the scope, the scale and scope of the issue and how it's going to affect the economic landscape, what is your vision about this knowledge and skill gap within European companies or
well, again, I'm flying at a much higher altitude. I don't know the detail of how this is organized in a firm, but let's say, take, for example, the question of the macroeconomics of transition and the macroeconomic of the Green Deal. This is something that is very complicated, and I don't think that right now, if you look at the academic world or the think tank scene in Europe or worldwide, we have a very clear view of what's going to happen. What you said about the fact that the plan was to destroy, capital, human capital and physical capital by means of regulation. When you close a coal mine, this is what you do. There's an asset that could produce some income flow, and you say it stops now. This is something that is that is new. That is not something that we regularly do. And then, of course, what we do, for instance, at the European Commission, when we try to assess the consequences from an economic and social point of view of this transition, is also to put in regard to this destruction of capital, the policies that are going to be put in place to compensate. So of course, when we say that the Fit for 55 strategy is going to be a net win of 1 million jobs over the horizon of the policy, we say that we're going to invest. At the same time, when we close a coal mine, we invest in human capital by reskilling, we invest in green technologies, etc., etc. And this is how, at the end of the day, we have a picture of something that is desirable from a collective point of view. Now, the detail of how this works, this dispersion, the risk analysis around this median scenario is, of course, a complicated business. And again, if you look, for instance, at what in France the Pisani-Ferry mission is doing right now, and there's an interim report that is very good and that tries to sketch out how we can think about that from an economic point of view. Well, this is complicated. And so, I mean, we'll come back to that later on, but I think that intellectual humility is a huge part of the skill set that is needed when you're a manager to confront with the story.
Yeah, and so I would like to hear you quickly on these soft skills that you mentioned, because here a lot of it is we lack knowledge. There are things that we don't know. We are faced with uncertainties regarding to how do we cope with some activities that maybe no longer will be there in some years. And actually, I think when you deal with this topic, uncertainty is a major thing. So is there a new skill, and how do you cope with that? So who wants to?
I have two in mind. One is learn to talk to scientists. And it could be talking to actual scientists, it could be reading a IPCC report or whatever you want, and that's something very specific. When I joined our company, we were 150, and like 10% of those are scientists. Yeah. And talking to those people and talking to the people they know, and not being oversimplifying, and at the same time being able to tell a story, because they don't tell story. They're lame at it, and it's okay, it's not their job. But trying to establish that connection between, let's say, business as a whole and science is something pretty new. We got out of science, we created managerial science, but it's not exactly the same stuff. And there's a way back, I think, to get into art science. And the other one is, it has been kind of a cliche for a few years now, but unlearning, relearning, continuous learning, lifelong learning, call it the way you want, but I think it's now. The scale and the speed at which we're going to transform is going to be, we talked about it a lot in digital transformation, but it wasn't that true. I mean, yes, of course, but you're smart, you know stuff, you adapt a bit, I get it, but I think this one is the big one in terms of speed. Maybe because it's digitally powered as well, no? So everything is going faster. When clients want to boycott a brand, it goes way faster than 10 years ago. So unlearning stuff and learning new stuff is something which is good news for you, because basically the only stuff that you know how to do is to learn stuff. That's how you got into this school. That's how I got into this school before you. You don't care what you learn, you just learn to learn. So it should be a good decade for you guys.
One that I would mention that is on the soft skill side is expanding your attention span. There's a lot of studies that show that at the moment humans have on average the attention span of a fish. It's because we're constantly stimulated by phones and sounds and lights and all these different types of pollution that we have in our lives. Doesn't always make it easy to get into the detail, but if you transform this concept into the net zero challenge for a business, we're talking about decades worth of work. We're talking about a lot of commitment, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of attention to detail that would require continuity and engagement over generations that will consistently push for the same agenda in and outside of the organization. To me, this is exciting because I've spent the last 5 years with scientists, which is a quarter of my team, with people that are genuinely concerned, and also with spending painful but useful time of seeing the climate change impacts that are happening on this planet by now already. And I think this is a useful part of the learning as well, because then it puts it into context. But if you have this attention span, you start noticing details that maybe would skip your mind when you think, how do I contribute to this? How do I make myself most useful? And what are the gaps in our approach, knowledge, and long-term thinking?
And keep in mind that in France, we have more real estate agents than researchers. This is one of the quotes of the Timothée Parric book, but think about it in terms of where do we invest our time and money, making the real estate market liquid or searching for new stuff.
But this is quite sad and in a bit ironic example, because real estate is the first industry that is impacted by climate change. Yeah. At the moment, it's accounted for that we've only been able to calculate properly between 10 and 15% of real estate's risks associated to the economy. If you look at the bank, any bank, and their balance sheet, majority of the value that they're sitting on is either overpriced and subsidized industries like the fossil fuel one, or real estate. So
maybe it's time to connect research and real estate.
I guess this is we're here.
We still have a little bit of time before we open it to the questions. I would like to know actually how you walk the talk when we talk about sustainability and talents. And so for you, I guess it's easy because you said we are recruiting the militant guys that are also the experts, etc. But actually it's really fascinating. How do you recruit your own teams? What types of skills do you need? What types of skills do you lack today? And then we'll turn to the European institution to see also how this skill issue is manifested inside the European Commission.
I probably exaggerated when I say 100% were climate activists. And that's right now what we're looking for. We're looking for people that are somewhere on this journey in terms of sustainability, but it can be pretty early as long as they're willing to learn, etc. And that have some hard skills that could be in sales, marketing, content, whatever type of job I would need. It's easy for me to act that way because when I took the job, I knew zero about sustainability. So I'm about to end my second year of the most intense year of learning of my life in terms of learning new stuff. So since I did that, I'm thinking that if you have people who want to learn, there's going to be a way to do it. But I'm not recruiting an engineer to build a wind turbine, so it's easy for me to say. I'm building a nice video to explain you that the world is changing. So in all, right now, that's what I do. I do hard skills from the economy of before and willingness to learn on sustainability. When they are in the same office, super easy. We are hiring in India, way more complicated. You need to have people that know about sustainability quite a lot before, because you cannot like absorb them into your own team on the daily life, on the fact that you talk about sustainability at lunch when you go and have beers after work. So there's a connection, and how do you scale that intentionally? That's not easy.
I would definitely build up on that in the sense that what you're saying is fully aligned to how we think in Plan A. One key component, though, that I never make a compromise on, and when I say I actually am always part of the interviewing process at the end, but not for the candidate to be interviewed, but for them to interview me. Because I need to make a commitment to them that what we're doing is not just the hype. We have the beauty of a 5-year history, so we were doing sustainability before it was cool, and that allows us really to show a history of consistent impact and also no compromises with our values, but that's something that I still believe on until probably we hit 300, which will happen soon. We will have the chance to exchange in this format. When we look at the people that join, I think there's been a lot of understanding and we keep on pushing this idea that there's no right or wrong moment for you to join this activity, and you can come and contribute with your know-how. The one thing that is expected, though, is that you can demonstrate genuine approach to the problem that you're solving. Recently, I interviewed a candidate, and what I always test people on is how deeply they want to work, not only in Plan A, but in climate, and to see this transformation of the economy. And just a few simple questions show, because they maybe have gone over some headlines and so on, but you don't see the curiosity. When someone starts speaking to me about like their favorite animal that they've learned how they're going to be impacted by climate change, or about the place where they come from and how they've educated themselves what this means, or how they've seen a business be at loss in terms of assets because climate change is already impacting that, or someone that is trying to learn to do ESG reporting but understands that it's not only about the reporting, it's about the action that comes, then you start to see that they have dived into a more genuine way, and that for us is really like one of the filtering points. We have quite an extensive recruitment process which goes really fast. We have probably like 10 to 15 steps, and that includes always a little bit of case studies related to the particular skills and so on, final interview with me, and half of that is also cultural fit. Like half of these interviews go for people that wouldn't work with you on a daily basis to test if you have the genuine heart that we like to bring on board.
Related to this, we hear a lot about silent quitting, about people leaving their jobs, etc. Do you have a hard time recruiting, and can you share one anecdote about that?
We get between 400 and 500 speculative applications a week, so we don't have a problem with that.
Is it the same at...
No, I'm not there, but since I'm recruiting 30 people a year, I don't need 400 applications, so I'm all right. So it's not that hard. Again, it's not that hard in France. Whenever you go and you enter in a completely new country, you still need to establish a lot of credibility, and it's weird.
What about the European Commission? Not about the number of appliances in your office, but
people still want to do European Commissioner as a job.
We're well known. We've been there more than 5 years, and we have no problem recruiting. No, more seriously, on the we're a big institution, and the recruitment process is quite codified for lots of reasons. But through the fact that actually most of the staff works some way or another with topics that are related to the Fit for 55 package and to the Green Deal in general, every recruitment process is de facto streamlining sustainability issues. Now, and also because we need more experts in that field, we have specific competitions that are opened up for people who have a strong hard skill set in this domain. Now, there's one point I would like to come back to, actually the previous point on the skill set for managers. I mean, you discussed very well, and it was interesting to see at the level of a firm what is needed. Of course, for policy design and policy implementation, it's probably a slightly different skill set, but not necessarily. And I would just mention one thing I think is important in the future, that also is important for you guys to know how you school and teach these guys, is again the uncertainty. So we're embarked on this journey that is going to last until 2050, 2100. If we succeed, if we don't succeed, we might all be dead in the meantime, but let's hope. We're very optimistic. So it's a story of decades. And it's a story of decades where we're planning policies based on technologies that do not exist yet. So there's a huge aspect of uncertainty there. If you don't have managers who are able to first recognize in data that we are on the wrong course, and then tell it to the guy who's just one step higher, speak truth to power, which in the field of policy and politics is not always a given. If you don't have these skills, well, we prepare ourselves for a complicated future. So this is really something that I would plea to teach every future manager in the private sector, but also in the public sector, this capacity to recognize, like you're a mountain climber at some point, you're decided that you go to the summit and you discover that it's not the wrong way. You can, try to go whatever it takes to the summit by using this course, and you might end up frozen or dead, or you might just, understand that you have to move back, and that's an important skill to develop in this specific century we're entering.
Okay, thank you very much. So if I try to summarize some elements of the exchanges that we had, this aspect of uncertainty is absolutely key. So it's at the same time what we don't know, recognizing what we don't know, also recognizing what we know, and so listening to the science, be able to connect with science, but also trying to communicate about that, and also integrating that into the different functions, tools. And here, just to echo what you said earlier, there is no job that is going to be non-green. Every job is becoming a green job or a sustainable job. Okay, so thank you very much for these important messages. And now we are going to turn to the Q&A session. Okay, so here apparently we have a first question for Fabien. So how does the EU Commission can act on sustainability, which is also a social issue, so not only an environmental issue, but also a social issue, as you explained, and at the same time be the guardian of competition, which led to the extreme liberalism. So here there is a reference to EDF and the energy market. So actually, I think the question here is, does these sustainability topics, both environmental and social side, come to question liberalism and the conditions of competition for regulators?
Well,
it's a complex question, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, the extreme liberalism formulation points to a subtext that I'm not, it's, let's say, well, there's a political side to this question, which I'm obviously not going to enter into because I'm not here to do politics, although I have a precise point of view on that. But, let's say, there is a tension, but this tension I think is pretty much, I wouldn't say that of every possible situation in Brussels in the past 10, 20, 30 years ago. But I would say that starting with with the last Commission and in the aftermath of the financial crisis that we have been through in the years 2010, the competition law has been quite, I would say, taking into account the realities of the new world we're living in, and to some extent flexibilized. So I take two examples. There's been a lot of temporary amodiation to how the competition framework works through during the COVID crisis, and now because of the war in Ukraine, of the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine, there's also a set of flexibilities that do exist. So I think there is some tension, but we're managing that tension. And the nice thing with the Commission, that is a collegial body that contains liberals, in the sense economic liberals that would probably subscribe to extreme liberalism views on competition, but also social democrats like my boss, who at the same time believe that competition is important. But by the way, I mean, everything we're talking about in terms of technology to make the Green Deal happen is also happening because of competition and discoveries in the industrial field that do not happen. It's not like the electric car has been invented by Lada. It's been invented in a... So, you know, we need these technological disruptions, and they come through competition. So it's not like we can do away with competition, and it's important. Even, you know, social democratic parts of the political spectrum are quite convinced that competition is important. The question is a question of dosage, and I think that right now we have the right dosage because we have the right people around the table discussing that with one another. And also with regard to the effects in the social sphere. It's something that is very much looked upon in detail by social democrats around the table. Not only social democrats, by the way. Everyone, I think, is now very aware that if too many people are left behind in this transition, the transition will not only not be optimal, but it will not happen because we are democracies. So if people are not taken on board, it does not happen, and we all get, you know, hotter and hotter until we boil. So. I don't think this is, I mean, it's a question of dosage, but I think we're much better than 20 years ago, and we have a right dosage now.
We have a question then that connects a little bit the regulation, institutional part, and also the private action. And so here, an ESCP alumni reorienting his or her career into sustainability to have a positive impact, and a big fear, which I can understand, about the bureaucratization of sustainability. And here with a tsunami of coming regulation, so here it would be interesting to know a little bit better what this person is referring to. But this person is afraid that 90% of her or his time will be absorbed into ESG reporting, disclosure, irrespective of how many consultants I use. And so actually the risk is that all this bureaucracy is not helping the firms to act, right? And taking time from action to reporting. So I think here, Lubomila, you have a...
So to give a little context on this tsunami, in the last 2 years, there's been more than 160 legislations that came out, heavily, obviously, coming from within the EU or from EU itself, but also US, UK, and so on. And what this means for a lot of businesses is essentially starting to prepare in different formats all these KPIs that they need to be formatted in the particular kind of given to them structure. I would take the chance to defend the reason why we need this. I always give the reflection that the carbon accounting and ESG reporting revolution that we're going through is the same as the financial accounting one when we went like a few decades back. What has been realized now, and I'm incredibly glad for this, is that the KPI GDP is not a reflection of reality in a way. We need additional KPIs in order to be able to understand what is the status quo, what is going to be the cost, and what is the action that needs to be taken and what levers we can take. By combining all these different KPIs alongside, of course, the typical monetary ones, we can then develop a clear and valid idea, perspective, but also a vision for the future that is aligned to data. Having said that, I do know from many of the large clients that we have that they're still wrapping their heads around the EU taxonomy. I still know that TCFD is a framework that is now being adopted one nation after the other, but it still doesn't fully reflect a deep understanding of what this financial risk assessment means and so on. There's a study also that came out that doesn't make things better from Harvard that said that there's no correlation between more reporting and action. And that's where this person, and thank you for this question because it's really important, can start pushing for KPIs to be put into context. We do this with our software, get in touch if needed, but also if you don't, by the fact that you're an expert in this field, you can put this into context that can lead to a reflection of what action needs to be taken. Because I think at the moment, one of the biggest problems that we have that is structural on a business level is that a lot of the reporting sits with the CFO, and usually the CSO sits separately. So the disclosures is sitting normally within the financial department, because it's non-financial reporting, and the action bit sits somewhere else. These two need to be brought together, and that's what we push our clients to do, but that's something that anyone can do that has already ESG reporting on the map of to-dos.
Maybe let's be very clear, the tsunami of regulation we're going through is very, very limited to the amount of disruption we're going to endure all together. So if you can't manage to go through taxonomy, we have a bigger problem than that. What I mean is that, okay to stop regulation, but show me one country in which naturally company decided to do the right thing for the environment altogether. So at some point, either you're a big believer in the market and you want the company to price correctly, and that's a lot of the thinking, you want to reflect.
Only Patagonia.
Exactly. And no, but that's a real example, super interesting. It's always easy to find one company, one example. The question is, does it scale? And right now we have no choice but to put an immense pressure on companies, both so that the market can price them accordingly, and two, that hopefully they can stop or being forced to stop because they cannot finance the activities they need to stop. So I understand. I would not be happy to feel a lot of taxonomy report either, but I don't see a better solution. My point is, I don't feel an urge to act that would be stopped by too much regulation in companies today.
Absolutely, and also an important element is that regulation is not necessarily opposed to innovation. It's also a way to scale practices and to speed up some transformations. We have a last question online. So what about promoting home office when possible in order to reduce traffic and pollution in the cities? Is it a bit better after COVID-19? But there is not a real transformation so far. What do you think? So here, question about process transformation.
I've looked for a study that would actually study the impact, and it doesn't exist yet, on real impact of remote working. What we see is that when people don't take their car or any transport to go to their work, they tend to move more when they're at home. There is a kind of limit of what when you travel 20 kilometers, you go back and you stay at home. When you didn't move during the whole day, you take your car to go 20 kilometers or 10 to the movie, to a restaurant, etc. So there's this kind of rebound effect. No, but it's a real thing. There's this kind of rebound effect in our personal life, and the data is untrackable. That's why the study doesn't exist. It's super hard to reconcile professional data, personal data, etc. But it's not a complete given that staying home is better, depending on it. It's always easier to eat a building rather than tens of individual houses. But then again, do you stop the eating when you go to work? Not so sure. So it's a complicated matter. But I love the rebound effect of travel.
Questions to the floor?
Yeah, we're gonna. Can you hear me on this? Yeah, we're gonna take start with one question. Does anyone currently in the room have a question to ask our speakers? Yeah.
So hello. So my question is especially for Fabien Del, but everyone can respond, I guess. It is the very ambitious plan to reduce the carbon emission by 50%, and one of the solutions is through digitalization. However, a lot of technology, especially advanced technology, use more energy, and currently it is a very big problem because a lot of coal is used to produce that energy in Eastern Europe, but also in Germany, especially since the Ukrainian war. So is there any solution? Does this put into question the fact that digitalization is the best way to go when we are going greener?
Yeah, so I'm not totally sure that we say that digitalization is the way to go green. We say the way to go green is to stop fossil fuel, reduce them over time, in particular coal. So, for instance, electricity that is produced by coal is something that is progressively phased out. Of course, right now, because of what's happening in Ukraine, the situation has been more complex to manage than what we thought when the Fit for 55 package was designed in July 21. But on the, we could discuss a lot on the question of is what's going on right now. Is it making things go faster or slower in our capacity to stave ourselves off of carbon? But you know, on the interplay between digital and green, there are dimensions where it's aligned. Obviously, a lot of you know, of the technologies that make things greener. I mean, I look at my solar panels on my roof. If they were not digital, I mean, I would not be able to optimize their use to charge my. So that's obvious. Now, of course, and Bitcoin is the is the worst example possible. Of course, some digital technologies are consuming a lot of energy, and if this energy happens not to be green, well, then the net effect is negative. That's an empirical question. We're not saying digital is the solution. We're saying digital is good for many reasons, and then because our overarching goal is Fit for 55, we say everything that is, you know, taking us away from this carbon footprint reduction should be reduced, and the policies in the package tend to do that. They are regulatory. They are, you know, trying to raise the price of carbon. So the package Fit for 55 is not about digital. It's about the price of carbon and the carbon emissions, and then it has, by construction, a retro effect on some digital uses that might be carbon intensive. We hope in the right direction. But again, it's a complicated question. I apply to myself what I said before. I don't know exactly. There might be some loopholes and some things that will need to be improved in the future. But you know, basically, I see your point, but it's not a policy design problem. It's a de facto issue that we're trying to address.
If I can add also something. One of the key elements of this package is there to demonstrate that business as usual is not possible anymore. And this is a realization that I don't feel fully has been embraced by the whole economy. What this means is that it will get uncomfortable if we don't take action now. You were saying earlier, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. This is the reality that we've seen in other negative repercussions of climate, be it by the floods in Europe, be it by the heat waves that we had. But what not business as usual means is that today, any given business and any given individual in that context as being an employee of a business has the opportunity to lead their industry into transforming. And by being the pioneer, or at least the first ones, or one of the first ones, you get to make some choices. And you get to make some choices earlier than others that would pave the way for you. And that is how we need to think, because it's not about just, okay, now we're substituting the old cars with EVs. It is about less consumption. It is about different type of consumption. It's about communal kind of transportation. It's about home office. It's about all of these things. We're not there yet where the math has given us a full picture of what each one of those elements is going to contribute to. But as long as we align today that this transformation needs to happen, and it needs to happen by radically changing the business as usual approach, then we're going to be fine. We're not fine yet.
And I just have one last question, because we need to wrap up in a few minutes. And that is, do you think that this emphasis on a sustainability mindset is only a question of employer brand attractiveness and meeting Gen Z expectations? Or is there something more? Are you seeing generational shifts, or what are these shifts that are pushing companies to hire?
Even if it was only employer branding and Gen Z, it would be massive enough to shift companies. In HEC yesterday or 2 days ago, a stand of Total that was recruiting got blocked by HEC students. HEC students are not known to be the most zadist, sorry for this French part, or massive rebel that there is on the world. I know for having been one, and I was not a rebel at all, and I'm still not a rebel. So what I mean is, it's big enough so that even if that was only an employer branding kind of issue, it would be massive. But obviously, it's more than that. I hope it's more than that. I hope that any company that is looking at it only for an employer branding kind of angle, well, it doesn't exist. And if they did so, they're going to end up recruiting climate activists that BCG is craving for. And if they don't change the way they operate on top of employer branding, there's going to be a backlash that is massive.
2 points on my side. The first one is that I fully agree with you that if there's a gap between the expectation that you set and what you experience once you get into the company, most likely this person is going to churn. They're going to leave your company. And this alignment in values, if it only stands on the surface, then a misalignment in values, it's only something that you've used to be able to recruit. It can have a lot of bad repercussions as an after effect, because then you're going to be blamed on greenwashing. We've seen it in a lot of companies all across the world where people not only walk out, but they leave one after the other because they're misaligned. We have it in our industry as well. And the second bit that I think is quite important to speak about is there is truly something called eco-anxiety, and that's something that is not a Gen Z thing, it is a human thing, because once you dive into the details, once you start speaking to these scientists, once you read all the scientific papers, or at least like, you connect yourself to the topic in one way or another, you start feeling a bit more concerned that your kids might not be able to live in the coming decades. And the usual response of someone that is smart and is driven and is motivated by love, humility, and just human kindness is to find a way to apply themselves to the problem. And that is usually when people quit. We just hired like super senior person, cannot say it, it will be announced in a few weeks' time, who came because his 2 children have become activists for Fridays for Future. This guy has had a very comfortable job, now has an even more comfortable, where he's on the forefront of action. But that would have never happened if he had not seen through his children's eyes what this really means in terms of a shift.
Let me answer that before we conclude. I think there is maybe a generational shift, because what I see is that students have understood that we are talking about their professional life, you know? And that like it's sustainability is not something for future generations. It's the future is now, right? And to connect with what you said also, there is this shared feeling that we have when you are connected with this topic, is that somehow if you don't freak out, you've not understood. And it's very important also to bring everyone on board of this very complex reality, the fact that it's also uncertain, and then to apply all the debates we had about upskilling, new approaches to that across all functions of the firm. And one big part of it is also top management. And my own experience, I would have been, but I think we will follow the discussion, is that the higher you go into the hierarchical ladders, the more heterogeneous the competencies on this topic. And this is a critical issue, I believe, for the coming months and decades, to upskill radically strategic making so that you have CEO leaders that are able to project their companies into the next decades and say, what is the place of my company in a future where I'm faced with resource scarcity, warming, biodiversity erosion, etc. And what is the place of my company in that new context? If we bring the questions at that level, then we are on track for the right level of radicality, as you said. So let me conclude by saying that I'm very happy that we had the exchange. We are extremely grateful for your participation today, Fabien, Lubomila, and Antoine. So thank you very much. If you want to continue following us, you are welcome. So it was our first ESCP Live, but you can stay posted by signing to the Choice newsletter. And once again, thanks a lot to the communication team of ESCP for organizing this first ESCP Live. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.